Hey everyone, this is Brooks from ClearPath Childcare Marketing. Welcome to the More Tours podcast. I am here with Bryanne from Tiny Learning Town. Bryanne, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started in the childcare industry.
Absolutely. My career in early childhood education started very young because my mom was a teaching assistant and I loved watching her for that. She has always been my mentor. And even in high school, my college essay was Mother Shadow because she did. And she wasn't just a TA, she was so much more. And I'm like, I strive to be that person that she was with it. And I did own and direct my own preschool, but that chapter has since closed. But that's okay. We're going to keep going. And now I'm here with Tiny Learning Town, which is basically a learning professional development hub for not only teachers, but for leaders as well. I think it's important that leaders need a space and they need support as well. So that's definitely been something that's been very important to me because when I first started off as the owner and director of the school, I'm like, where do I go? So it's been definitely an interesting challenge and everything that I have experienced because I started off as a floating TA and worked my way up. So when I say I've worked every area of education, I don't just say that, I actually mean it. And I'm really happy I did because it gave me a real sense of what the need is, how they feel in that position, and what that looks like.
Awesome, very cool. And so how long have you been running the Tiny Learning Town? How long have you been doing that?
So Tiny Learning Town was actually, I started creating it in 2023, but I officially launched it in 2024.
Nice.
Mhm.
Very cool. So is it a coaching or mentorship kind of group, or tell us a little bit more about the structure?
So like I said, we do online and we do in-person professional developments, workshops. One of my favorite workshops I always do for one of the conferences I appear in is a sensory workshop because we always have to have fun as educators. So I love when educators get to come in and they have fun with it. And we like to have fun when we do these things. So I do the professional developments, we do workshops, I go to conferences, and I really try to advocate for the early childhood community in general. So it's really great. And honestly, people come to me, they're like, well, we need this kind of training, we need that kind of training. And I will literally just create it on the spot if that's what they need. Because even though I offer a certain set thing, I don't box myself in on that. Everybody has different needs, and whatever they need, I will customize and put to what they need.
Very cool. Very cool. So do you work predominantly with preschools and like the really early learning leaders?
Yeah, my area of expertise has always been early childhood. I usually work with birth through 5 programs. I will go into kindergarten, but after that, I kind of need support from other people because I'm like, I don't really know that much about that area, and I never want to steer anybody in the wrong direction.
Right. And you're working on your PhD, is that right?
My EDD, yes, my
EDD.
educational doctorate, yes. I
Nice.
was going to do a PhD, but whew,
Yeah.
I'm good with the EDD because, like I've learned that PhD is very much about research and continuing that research. I found out very quickly I'm not a great researcher, so definitely the EDD route. But it's been really great. I've had really great. And this summer, I had to take courses, and one of my professors, he's absolutely amazing, and has given me a lot of great ideas and ways I could tackle things and build partnerships and all that good fun stuff. So I'm very appreciative for the course. It's been very helpful.
Nice, nice. Well, that's great. And so I want to just kind of dive into
Yeah.
your expertise here and predominantly on the classroom management side. And so I guess what are some common struggles that you see a lot of early learning leaders, really face when it just comes to basic classroom management? I mean, it could be teachers, it could be directors, with like punishments or, so tell us a little bit about some of those common struggles.
I think one huge misconception about classroom management is that, oh, it's one factor. It's about what happens in the classroom and how they teach. When it's so much more than that. There's so much that is there from, yes, learning how to do circle time, learning how to deal with the behaviors, but also what kind of teacher are you? Are you a passive? Are you like, there's all different types of ways that we can teach, and there's no one right way. And I think people try to group themselves into, well, I've seen somebody else teach like this, so this is how I'm going to do it. We really need to make sure that we are including professional identity in classroom management. And we need to make sure that we're understanding, how do we teach? Because that affects everything else of, well, then how do we deal with behaviors? And I think the biggest, most important one is working with our coworkers in classroom and out of classroom. Because how we treat each other is how the children will model how they treat each other. And I think people forget that. And even though you might not be yelling, when there's tension and you can feel it, yeah, yeah. And, and I think directors, especially when I first stepped into the role director, I was like, wow, I really need to learn how to explain how I'd like to see classroom management, or understand their version of classroom management and what that means. So I think directors sometimes and leaders get stuck in that mindset again of, it's one thing, but classroom management is very fluid. It's not perfect. It will never be perfect. You just get skilled at learning how to, okay. And one thing lately too, we've been recognizing is that a lot of places are wanting me to speak to their teachers about their self-regulation. So we're not just talking about the kids, we're also talking about ourselves. We have calm down corners for kids, but where's our moment to take a break? Where are we stepping off to the side a minute? Even if we can't leave the room, we need to have a space where we go, okay, it's okay. It's okay. He didn't mean to throw that block in my face and hit me. It's all right. So I think it's just, there's so many aspects of it that we do need to pay attention, especially as leaders, to where are they struggling? Why are they struggling? What is the cause? Is something I'm not providing support in? Or maybe they just don't know how to get to that point. And I think as teachers, we have to learn how to ask for help. Hey, I don't know how to deal with this behavior. Or, hey, I can't seem to get them to calm down at this time. What can I do?
Mm.
So it's a very big area. And I think
Sure.
we just have to remember it's not just one specific factor, it's many.
Right, right. Because I don't know if you knew this, but I'm a former educator myself. I was high school teacher and I worked at a preschool. I was a preschool teacher as well. And when I first started, I thought classroom management was just simply, you know, punishment and or just redirecting, and when bad things happen, that was classroom
Absolutely.
management. And
Well, I
so
mean,
that's
and,
what
and
you
going
think,
from high
yeah.
school to pre-K, I mean, that's a huge jump.
Right. Yeah,
So I could
exactly.
believe why you would kind of manage that in the same area, because that's what you do with high school students. Yeah,
Right,
for
right,
sure.
but you're right, 100%. It is the whole deal, how you run the whole classroom from the start of the day to the end of the day, and it's not just, the kid did something bad, they didn't follow direction, so correction, or whatever. Yeah, it is a bigger issue, and so tell me a little bit about how you approach when a when a teacher comes to you rather than like a director or someone who's in leadership. So I guess break those down a little bit more if you can.
Do you mean like teacher going to a teacher, or?
Yeah, yeah. So if a teacher came to you and said, "Hey, I'm having some issues with classroom management," how would you approach that to them to help them?
I mean, I think the first and foremost step is, why do you feel that way? Where do you feel you're struggling? And most importantly, and we're going to take a step back 1 minute, making sure we have an open door policy that teachers actually feel comfortable enough to walk into the office to ask for help. They know by asking for help, it doesn't mean punishment or retaliation or judgment. So that's first and foremost. But once they do, well, why do you feel you're struggling? Where do you feel you're struggling? Break down for me what's happening in those moments that you feel that you're having a hard time with this. And I also think that as a leader, okay, well, now we're going to go observe at that time, because we need to see it in real life. We can't just hear about it, we need to see it. So we can be like, oh, okay, I see where you might be struggling a little bit. And then also there too, okay, now what kind of professional development am I going to be setting her up with? Because don't get me wrong, while I have knowledge as a leader, sometimes it's like kids with parents. You don't want to hear from your parents all the time. You want to hear maybe from somebody else, and sometimes we unfortunately just don't have the time. And I want to make sure she's getting the attention that she needs to fix this problem. So if it's something I can provide professional development on, then I'll do it. I might provide some YouTube videos, or hey, read this article real quick. I saw this, thought of you, or calling somebody and say, hey, I need you to come talk to this teacher here. Just maybe kind of give her some hints and tips and tricks and go with that. Because at the end of the day, as a leader, I very much do not know it all. So maybe I don't really understand how to help her fix that situation. So instead of trying to act like I do, I'm going to call somebody in.
Right. And I mean, you brought up a great point, asking for help. and knowing when to ask for help, I guess how to ask for help as well, and just being vulnerable and going to the director, going to the owner, whoever's in leadership, and just saying, hey, we need help, and so I think that's just a very good mindset to have. And I think that comes from the relationship too, kind of like you said with your helpers in the classroom, and even just going to them and saying like, hey, we need to figure this out for this behavior or this continuous behavior. And so I mean, it just all comes back to the main theme that you had, that it's a much bigger, it's a much bigger
It
uh
literally starts at the top
yeah.
from the beginning.
Right,
And
right.
it's hard when you're a director being hired to go into a school that's been open for how long? Now you're walking into you don't even know what. And you think you're going in there, trying to make this big, huge difference, and they're all looking at you like, what are you doing? Because they're not used to that. So when you have a culture that's toxic and non supportive, it's really hard to break into those environments, especially when you're walking into it. When you start your own school, you're running your own school, very different strategies, a very different meaning for it, for sure. But, I think it's like anything else. When people are treated a certain way for so long, that's going to show. It's going to reflect in the school, whether it be positive or negative. I recently had, this past March, I had the honor of going to Belize to speak at their teacher union conference. And for one Saturday, I did 2 workshops back to back. And it's interesting because while there's some cultural differences, there are still the same problems. And one thing I noticed there is anytime I'm like, well, why didn't you ask each other for help? Or why didn't you go to this one for help? They're like, we don't do that. We don't trust each other. We don't trust our leaders. And I was like, oh my gosh. And they all had the same comment, which was even more heartbreaking because it wasn't just 1 or 2 people. It was, well, we don't trust each other. So I'm like, so how are we going to change that? What are we going to do to just change things maybe in our own classroom? What can you guys do? Maybe try to put your trust into each other. Learn the word confidentiality. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to speak to those leaders. I wish I would have had the chance and opportunity to, but, so it's really interesting to hear what people think about their leaders, how they view their leaders, their point of view on their whole area. I would be very hesitant to put a suggestion box in, but that's just me because I don't think it's going to go well. But, other schools, for sure, you want to make sure teachers have a voice. When you walk into a school, you could just tell the culture by how the teachers interact with each other, how they interact with the children, and it's amazing to see how you could tell without even having to say a word.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think that schools need to realize that too, that families pick up on that. When a family walks into a school, they're going to feel that tension, they're going to feel that negativity, and it's going to feel off for them. So it doesn't just affect leaders and educators, it affects the children, it affects the families, which means now you have a name in the community. And that could be the make or break of you. So it's really important to pay attention to those aspects of classroom management.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on something that I wanted to kind of hone in on here. So what can directors and the leaders do to kind of either build that trust or convey to their teachers like, hey, I've got your back, or you can always come to me. So what can directors or leaders do to really put that forward that they can really help if they need it?
I mean, I think a big one is admitting when you make your own mistakes, having accountability for your own mistakes. And oh my gosh, my very first job as a teaching assistant, the place I worked at, they would not sneeze quicker than to throw you under the bus. If something was wrong, you could be sure that director and management were not taking responsibility for it. Oh, it's that one's fault. Oh, it's this one's. What? Like, how dare you? So I think definitely making sure we understand our own accountability. It's like working like even with the kids. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to yell at you. It's okay to apologize. It's okay to admit when we've done wrong. And there too, you need to kind of think in your mind of what kind of leader do I want to be? How am I going to get there? If you're starting your own school, great. Like, you kind of start from the ground and go up. But if you're entering a school, you need to observe, pay attention. And I think it's just slowly making sure your door is literally open when all they've ever seen is a closed door and do not come in here. I think it's making sure of just even walking into the room. Good morning. How are you doing today? Are you okay? Or hey, Brooks, I see you've been like yelling a little bit today. Is everything all right? Do you want to step out in the hallway and talk, or do you want to come see me later? If not, I understand, but no, I'm here for you. It's just making those difference of make things personable,
Hmm.
make it to their needs and not just a generic good morning, everybody. Sometimes we want to be asked how we're doing because even though everybody's like, leave your home stuff at home, sometimes it's easier said than done. Like, it's not always realistic. So being aware that people do have lives outside of school. Maybe something serious is going on there we don't know about, and they might just need a little extra support. So just making sure that you're keeping confidentiality.
Hmm.
My teachers, no matter where I worked, I always told them, if I'm saying to you between you and I expect it to be just that. Because otherwise, of course, I'm expecting there might be some talk of, hey, guess what she just told me? But I really try to nab that in the bud. Gossip and talking behind everybody's back, that's what really creates problems. So
Hmm.
I think directors need to recognize the type of environment that they have, the type of culture that has been created. And if they do not like what they're seeing, they need to write down what they want to see. They need to get to the root of that problem, because if you don't get to the root of the problem, you're just fixing surface level and it's going to continue happening. It may not happen for a little bit, but we always have to get to the root of the problem.
Hmm.
And if it's one specific person, then we need to have a serious conversation of, well, how are we going to handle this? Because this is not working. And having those hard conversations of, this is what I've noticed. And also giving true constructive criticism. Don't just say it to be mean. Say it because you are concerned. And when you're very transparent with your staff, they know you're not going to lie to them. When I first opened my school, I've never owned a business prior to that. I've never cried so much in my life because I'm like, what do I do? Because I had the education side down pat, but I didn't know anything about the business side. And I was very honest. I'm like, guys, listen, I messed up. So here's what we're going to do to fix this now. Not because it's your fault, because it's mine. Just making sure that I'm being transparent with them, because I want them to know that, okay, she is telling us the truth. And if I cannot tell them something in that moment, I would phrase it of, I can't talk about this right this second, but I promise everything will be okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
So.
Yeah, and again, you brought up some really great points here. The accountability aspect, is so important in leadership of any kind in any industry. And so, because when you, as the leader, show accountability, then showing it's okay to have accountability, then you're showing your employees or the teachers that it's okay for them to have accountability as well, and they should have it, right, for their, and it just comes down to building that culture, like you were saying, because that culture really, you are correct 100%. If the teachers are not happy, then the classroom doesn't run smoothly, or you know they get angry and then might send a bad text to a parent, or mouth off to a parent on their, on the phone and responding, and so I'm sure you've seen it all. Um, but tell me a little bit about tools. So tools, and this might be kind of juvenile here, but so like when I was teaching and when I was at the preschool, we had walkie-talkies. And so everyone had the same, like if something was going on, we could just, pull up the walkie-talkie, it would go to the director, go to all the other teachers, which it was kind of a smaller preschool. But so so that really helped. Point being, it really helped when there was a situation or someone needed something, and that really helped with, just the basic communication and kind of building that teamwork and team mentality. And so are there some other tools or things like that of any kind that you would recommend that can really help with the classroom management or just running the preschool?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, I'm with you on the walkie talkies. We used to have so much fun with our walkie talkies, especially at dismissal time. We always had a great time with them. But, I think again, there too, I always like to try to reflect back to kids so we can kind of see the connection. We see every child. Well, we're supposed to see every child as an individual, acknowledge their own uniqueness, and kind of help to get the tools that they might personally need to get to thriving and to learning what they need to learn. Same can be said for adults. How you might communicate might be very different than how I communicate. How you perceive something is going to be very different than how I perceive it. So I think it's, again, knowing your staff and asking for their opinions, giving them that voice of, hey, if we were to incorporate walkie talkies, how do we all feel about it? Maybe I don't like the high pitched noise, and every time it goes off, I'm like, oh my gosh, so how can we adjust to, okay, well, why don't you turn yours down a little bit? Or, hey, we're going to try switching it out. It's about knowing your team, and not only knowing your team, but what works for you as well. What is realistically going to work for you? Is you having a walkie talkie on all the time going to be okay? Is it going to interrupt your day? Is it going to interrupt phone calls? So, I think the tools, while we could give all sorts of suggestions, at the end of the day is going to come down to, but what does your team need? And for classroom management, again, it's also having one-on-one conversations. You don't have to have it every day. Maybe like once a month, you set aside time of, hey, let's pull everybody in one at a time. We got all the floater TAs here. I want to get everybody in the door. What's going on? How are you feeling? Are you viewing any problems? Do you have any area of opportunities that you need me to address for you? Where are you struggling? And just having those conversations makes a huge difference. Huge. I was an interim director for a year at a preschool, and they were never asked that before. So when I asked her, like, oh, well, thank you for asking. I'm actually really having a hard time with this one's behavior. I'm not sure how to address this problem with my TA. And I'm like, oh, we can handle all that. No problem. And also a big part of professional classroom management is professionalism. If we're all not on the same page of what professionalism means, people start making things up in their head of what that means. So now I'm like, ooh, Brooks is being unprofessional. And you're like, ooh, that one's being, so you're not the interim director position. We all sat down one day and made a list of, what does professionalism mean here? How does that look here? How do we get there as a team? And then I would carry that around. I made copies, gave it to everybody. And then when issues came up, I'd go into those classrooms and be like, okay, where does that fall under our professionalism? So now it's not personal anymore because it was made by the team for the team. And now people aren't feeling personally attacked because I'm not like, why would you do that? So now they're like, ooh, yeah. And especially if they made up the one, they're like, oh, actually, that was my idea. I'm like, there you go. So how can we fix this? How can I support you or help you to get to where you need to be? And I think tools could come in many different forms. It could be YouTube videos. It could be podcasts like yours. It can be just a printed sheet with a cute little quote on it that get everybody laughing or that makes them feel inspired. So I think tools come in many different forms based on the needs of your team. And I think as directors, we have it in us. I've seen wonderful directors that I've always been like, you know what? They're my mentor. I like what they're doing. Yes, let's go with that. And then there's others that I'm like, no, I don't want to be like that. So a lot of the directors and wonderful supervisors and people I've worked with, except minus that one, have all very much been, I'm here. My door is open. If you need anything, let me know, which I appreciate totally. Even as a leader, sometimes other directors are like, oh, if you ever need to talk, I'm like, yes, please. Yes, please. Let's do it. I think it's just really important for us directors and leaders to come together as well. We need that community. So hey, Brooks, I'm having a hard time with getting my staff with classroom management in this aspect. What are your thoughts? Did you have this problem? What did you do? We're not alone. We're not alone. And a lot of us out there are such great leaders. We care so much about our staff. It's just making sure that we're able to recognize their needs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, comes back to that culture, and just building it up from the ground up, right? And so I did want to touch on the professionalism a little bit, because we're going to switch gears here shortly. But so that professionalism, that's something that's really important, and I feel like is just kind of lacking in a lot of different industries, including ours, home service, and so how can directors make sure to put forth the, like, yes, we have a dress code, for example, for our teachers, and we need to follow that profession. We have a way, to handle, disgruntled parents, or there's a, so what can leaders do to make sure that their teachers are exhibiting that professionalism?
Well, I think first and foremost, we all have to recognize that there are certain things in professionalism that are not up for debate. They are mandatory. Maybe there's different ways we can interpret it, but at the end of the day, the dress code is the dress code. And if you come in here not prepared, we're going to have a little conversation about that. And again, too, even like in regards to parents and stuff like that, it depends on the program and their needs. So my parents may be different from your parents because we're in different areas, but again, asking your staff, because I think a lot of us assume we all know what professionalism is. And we, in our heads, we know what we want to see. But when we don't actually say it out loud, we're like, what are they doing? What is this? This one time when I had my school, I worked with this gentleman. He had never worked with preschoolers before. He came from a middle school. And I went over classroom management with him a little bit. Like, okay, what do you know coming from middle school? Okay, yeah, like we could take that. And I remember one day I was in my office and his wall to his classroom was with my office. And I hear music playing and it's Queen. And all I hear is, Mama, I killed a man. I'm like, what's happening? And I go in there, I'm like, what are you playing? He's like, Queen. And I'm like, no. Kids Bop. Kids Bop, my friend. Like, so we had to have a very long conversation of how playing that kind of music is not only not professional, it's not developmentally appropriate, and it's not okay for the kids to be hearing that kind of music quite yet. Let them get to middle school and then they could be exposed to that, but having conversations with our staff of, well, what does this mean to you? What do you, and like I said, sitting down, making a list of what is professionalism here based on our mission and vision statement, based on what we all know. How is professionalism here, minus the stuff that is not negotiable? Give them that voice. When you feel you have a voice, you're going to show up happier. You're going to show up knowing you contributed and that what you think and what you say matters. When you feel shut down, you close down. And then we're like, oh, we're quiet. So I think it's just, again, really knowing how you want to see your school run, what you believe professionalism is, and how are we going to get our staff to that point. And again, there's no shame in hiring outside help. There's no shame in having discussions with other leaders and directors or consultants like myself of like, hey, like, I know how I want to see this, but I'm not too sure how to get there or how to bring this topic up nicely. Because sometimes there are awkward topics. When somebody's coming in, you're like, ooh, okay. Like, we need to talk about body odor, or maybe we need to talk about what they're wearing. It can get personal really quickly. So, we do have to be careful, because I always like to think of how would I like to be approached about this? And I hope somebody would approach me about this if it was the other way around. So I think it's just making sure we understand what we want to see, how we want to get there, what voice our team will have in it, and what's non-negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
So being late, that is non-negotiable, no matter how you want to look at it. This is not a 9-to-5 desk job where if you don't show up right away, it's okay. Now we're at a ratio. Now we got to run around and scatter people around to make sure that now your classroom's a ratio because you're late. So lateness was a very big thing for me. Like, yes, come on, you can do it. You can do it.
Yeah. Well, that's something interesting as well. This idea of like non-negotiables and mandatory professionalism, like these things are like everyone should be doing all the time, no matter what, essentially. But then there's these other pieces like that you might not think of, like that, like the guy playing Queen, it's like who would really think to put that in their, rules list, when hiring and until it happens, And so I do think, like you said, it is a ever evolving, process for your center, for your area, for your staff. And so I do like that point there.
Just like the parent handbook. Why does it get so big? Because we see things and we experience things that we're like, nope, we putting this in here because we're not dealing with this again. So it's the same thing of it grows as we grow. Handbooks, onboarding, it's not meant to stay the same. It has to grow as the schools grow.
Right. Very good. And so I wanted to switch gears here and talk a little bit, since we're kind of talking about the handbook here. So in terms of bringing in enrollments and bringing in new families and putting forth this professionalism and getting the opportunity, by getting people to come in the door, what are some ways that you liked to, when you were running your preschool? What were some of the strategies, if you had some, that brought people into the door, brought families into the door?
So my preschool was kind of unique because we were fully universal pre-kindergarten. So all of our families were low-income families that applied through the district. They got the program for free, and we got paid by the district. We offered before and after care course, which was the cost of the family's responsibility. So with that program, because we were full UPK, I didn't have to worry so much about enrollment because I knew we had it. There were so many families who wanted this that I knew we had it. We had 4 classrooms. We had a total of 60 kids in that building. And even some families, if they were on a waiting list, we would even provide online learning until their child could be physically present in the school. Mm-hmm. And then once somebody dropped out, we're like, okay, get them in. But we were always at the top of everybody's list because there was a couple of reasons. We had a very wonderful, we were a melting pot of culture, languages, and everything else that could be imaginable. So when we talked about classroom diversity and diversity in general, we were showing it in the school. We had kids who spoke Spanish, Urdu, Russian. My Spanish is no bueno, but everything else is non-existent. So it was very interesting because I always like the kids, teach me how to say this. And then we work together to teach each other, so we recognized the differences. We accepted it. We invited the parents in to share their culture with the kids' classrooms. And we just made sure to really make it very personable. We were very transparent, again, with our families. We weren't like, oh yeah, we do this and that, and then not follow through with it. We really tried to make sure we had events for just the parents. And even though it was nice that we had events just for the parents, the classrooms would be open and there would be people in there to watch the kids so the parents can have their moment of learning and listening and doing what they needed to do. Mm-hmm. And we didn't just focus on academics because, as we all know, if there is no regulation there, especially emotionally, it doesn't matter how many times you teach them to write their name. They're not gonna take it in because they cannot physically control themselves. So a big thing for us was when that child walked in the door, not, hey, do you know your colors, your name, or this, that, or the other thing. It was, let's observe this child to see what happens in a tough moment, how they respond, how they transition. And we looked at the child literally as a whole, as what they always talk about. So word did get out. We were not a special ed school. We were not an inclusion school, but occasionally they didn't check it certain parts of the application, or they sent the child and it was like, oh yeah, we have to talk about this. Because a lot of our teachers were not certified special ed. I am, but the teachers were not. So I didn't mind stepping in, and oh my goodness, I love my babies though, because I always got very attached to the ones with behavioral needs. I don't know why, but those were my buddies for the year. And the teachers and I would work together on how are we going to help this child. We involved the parents as much as we could. We got as much information out of the parents as we could. Sometimes we had to hire translators, but you know what? At the end of the day, it was worth it. Mm-hmm. It was worth it. So it was just really making sure that the community knew who we were. I don't care what kind of online presence you have. One word, bad word of mouth will take you down quicker than a good Google review. So it doesn't matter what's being said about you online, what's actually being experienced in person, what's going around the community is what matters. That's what's going to bring people in. It's going to be what's keep people away. Mm-hmm. Now, don't get me wrong. We could be doing everything perfectly, but some parents, it's not a good match with some families. And that's okay. But at the end of the day, we also know the truth. So we try to convey that as much as possible. We did not do that. And we know we did not do that, but all right. And I think just having community events, allowing the community into your space, onto your property of, hey, look, we're having a plant sale today. And everybody in the community is seeing the things in the ground and they're coming to check it out. So it's also about just being really creative, thinking outside the box. Again, getting your staff involved. Does anybody have any ideas? You'd be surprised how many good ideas come out of teachers. They're like, oh yeah, I saw another school do this. Let's try it. And I'm like, I see that's a great idea. So again, it's getting everybody involved and having a referral system. Parents love that. If they get money off one month, they're going to jump on it. Sure. So hey, refer somebody to us, tell them to drop your name. We'll give you 10% off your next bill next month. We're not going to keep it going, but you give them that incentive of if you help me, I help you. And parents are going to recognize that. They're going to know that even though this is maybe not a good fit, they tried to help. Mm-hmm. And I got a couple of dollars off one month. I'm happy as could be. My daughter's in college right now, and they didn't give her anything her first year. I'm like, I just want $200 off, maybe $100, just so I feel like I'm saving a little. Come on. So I think it's the same with families. Of course, we do not want to underprice ourselves to where we're not making any money. We're losing money on it. We got to pay our staff. We got to do this. We got to do that. So it's just trying to find that happy in between of what can we offer? How can we offer it? How are we going to convey it to our communities? And everybody's community is different. What I do in my area of New York is very different than what I would do in New York City. So I think it's just really getting creative, thinking outside the box. And, like even like on some of the Facebook pages for moms and stuff, I go on all the time and they're like, oh, I need recommendations for preschools. And you see the same schools being recommended time after time. So you're like, why are they being recommended time after time? Why is our name not being put into the hat, if you will? So I think it's just about, again, taking a step back, paying attention. What are we offering? How are we unique? What are the parents going to see that's going to make them like, you know what? I'm coming to you. I'm going to come and I'm going to tell my friends to come with me. So it's also just having that perspective. And again, too, of how's the culture of the school? Does everybody love each other? Everybody hate each other? Are we kind of in the middle? Where are we going with this? Because that will determine what brings in. And, families may start and you're like, but they're going to see it. The cracks do show up after a while. So again, it's just making sure that you know where your culture is. There's no point in spending a ton of money on advertising and everything else if you're just going to continue to have the same problems.
Right.
So I think it's just, again, just being creative, putting it out there online, continue to promote yourself, get out into the community, purchase cookies from the local baker down the way and hand them a flyer. Get the community involved. Mm-hmm. That's going to be your biggest asset.
Right. Because what we do at our agency is digital. We focus on the online presence and things like that. But one thing that we always, preach is that if you don't have a good name in your local area, digital marketing isn't really going to help. It might help a little bit, maybe. But at the end of the day, they're going to find out real quick, if your center is, messy or, whatever that problem is that might be there, they're going to find out real quick,
And I mean, especially as a new school, how do you put yourself out there digitally when you're literally just opening your doors? So nobody's even heard of your name before. You just opened up or you're getting ready to open up. And I think that's the harder part of trying to get people to enroll before you open. Mm-hmm. That's a very hard task. And whoever is hired for that job needs to be paid very well, because getting butts in the seats, especially before you open, can be really difficult because some parents might not want to have to wait 5 months. They want it now and they found another place. So, so I'm always really curious about what people are offering and how they get parents to keep that contract, yes, I'm going to wait for you to open in 5 months. We will definitely be coming to you in that time. So I think it's like anything else, especially when you're a franchise name. People have good and bad affiliations with it. Franchise is another story, but I'm not a huge fan of it because even though it might be my dream, somebody else, the second, it could be turned to a whole. But franchises can have good and bad names to it. So if you got a bad name, you got to figure out how to get that across the community. That wasn't us. That was that center, but we are not affiliated. Right. And the opposite too, of if they've never heard of you before and everybody's looking up online and there's no presence. Okay, there's no Google reviews, there's no social media or digital. So how do we create that footprint now that people are getting exposed to us? And I'm not gonna lie to you, I hire people at that point too, because my pay grade stops like about here when it comes to digital. I have no idea how any of that works. I don't know about algorithm. I just try my best and hope it gets by the right people. So in those situations, if I want to see something happen specifically in an area that I'm not very strong in, I do not mind hiring people to do it, because at the end of the day, I'm going to get back from it. Mm. And I didn't have to stress about it and worry about it because I know Brooks had it under control for me.
Right. And, directors and leaders are spread very thin as it is, Yeah,
we wear 50 million hats every day. So, trying to change the hats, it could get a little much. I never mind hiring out. It just, even though it's tight, might make the budget a little tight, it's going to make your life easier at the end of the day. So if you know nothing about marketing or business, like when I first started my school, as I said, I didn't have any business background. Thank God for my accountant. Oh my gosh, I don't know what I'd do without him. Thank goodness for my lawyer, because I'm like, wait, what is this again? Like, how do we do this? And I also hired a business coach. It put me in the red for a little bit, but I got out of it. But I need that education. I need to educate myself and understand, where are we going? How are we getting there? Because we got the educational side down pat, but I have no idea how to do this spreadsheet.
Right.
Ask for, even as directors and leaders, we have to know it's okay to ask for help, because we don't know it all. And we don't want to ever give that impression, because then it just puts more pressure on us that we have the answers all the time. And I always tell my staff, I'm not really too sure on that. Let me get back to you. I'm going to ask around, get the right resources, and then I'm going to get back to you with it.
Hmm.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
Well, I've really enjoyed our conversation here, Brianne. And so to wrap things up here, what are some just tips that you could give any leaders about classroom management or anything? You could, because you cover a lot of different topics, and so just anything that you could give to them that might be struggling, or the school year just started for some people that take summers off, and so really crazy time, and so anything that you can give them, kind of final thoughts, I guess.
I think as leaders, we need to remember to have fun with it. Yes, it's a business for sure. We put a lot on our plate, but we also need to have fun with it. If you hear a classroom playing music, going in and dancing, go and enjoy them. Go dance. If they're finger painting, get your hands messy. We have to remember to have fun too, because it can't be all serious, all business, all time. Because that's when we start going downhill. When we forget why we're in that position, why we opened our school, why we joined the school in the first place. What is it that attracted us to it to be like, let me apply or let me open it? So we have to have fun. We got to remember that we just have to loosen up a little bit. Because if we have fun, the kids have fun, the teacher is like, oh, okay. It doesn't feel so by the book, if you will, and we have to follow these specific directions. And I think it's important for directors and leaders too, we always ask our teacher, well, what's your why? Well, what's our why? Make sure you're very clear on what your why is, because that will help you develop everything else. It'll help you develop your vision and mission statement and how you wanted that to come to life and how you want that to be perceived and how you want to be seen in the community. So if you don't know what your mission is and you're just kind of going in blind and not really knowing, okay, well, this is what I want to see in my program, it's going to be a little bit difficult. You can get back there, but it's just important to know your whys and what you want to see. Like I said, I wanted to make sure that our students were self-regulating and they had certain social emotional skills before we're jumping into academics. That was very important to us, very important to me. So we made it a very big mission to the whole school of, this is how we're going to get them to learn. We're going to start with step A and work our way up. And I think also, again, just being flexible. Things happen. And sometimes we can control it, sometimes we can't. So at some point, I'm like, you know what? If we can't be in them, let's join them. So we expect our teachers to be flexible and accept certain things. So do we. Some days it's just not going to happen. And you know what? Go sit down in the classroom, have some snack with them, drink some juice, and just enjoy your time. Enjoy your time. And even with classroom management, again, just knowing your staff. It's just like the families when they first come in. We're hard working on building those relationships, understanding where they're coming from, who their children are, what they see. So we want to do the same for our staff. We want to jump in. We don't want to be stage 5 clingers, but we also want to jump in really hard, especially when people are new coming into the building mid-year. That's the hardest, and if you can, make sure you have an assistant director. Make sure you are delegating tasks to people who can do it. Don't do what I did in the beginning of I'm Superwoman. It's my program. I have to handle it all. Everything has to be done by me. I burned out so quickly. It was not even funny.
Yeah.
And teacher burnout and leader burnout are very real things. And it's nothing to be ashamed of. We all sometimes overdo it. So we just need to remember to ask for help, understand ourselves, our teachers, and just sometimes take a deep breath and regulate ourselves as well. We forget to breathe sometimes. I know that sounds silly, but we forget to breathe. And we really do, as leaders, we have to, when we get home, we have to disconnect for a little bit. Yeah, I know people are going to be texting out and stuff, but you know what? Put your phone aside on do not disturb for an hour or two, eat dinner, relax a little bit, get your head clear. Even just taking 10 minutes to do something every night that you like, drawing, playing a game, whatever, it resets you. And it makes you remember too, like, even though I am a person that's very important at work, I am also me at home and in my personal life. And that's really important that we reflect on both and make sure that we're not burning out at home, we're not burning out at work, because the two together, it's hard, and also just remember there's a community out there, so find your people, go to the conferences, come talk to me, and just make sure that you're getting where it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to raise a leader as well. So it's important that we have our team it's important that we have our supports as well. So then we're not feeling very alone, because being a leader can feel very isolating. You can feel like you're very alone because we're not there to be everybody's friends. So everybody is all communicating and having lunch together. And that's hard transition when you're going used to being in the classroom, and then you jump into that leadership spot. So leadership doesn't have to be isolating. You just have to find your community, and you have to reach out, ask for help, make friends with other directors and leaders, and just jump on in. So definitely all those for sure.
That's great. Well, Bryanne, this has been awesome. This has been really, really good. I've really enjoyed our conversation. And so yeah, absolutely. And so where can everybody find you? Where can they follow you?
So we have all of our social media accounts linked on our website. So it's tinylearningtown.com, and they could go ahead there. We're also on Instagram. We're on TikTok, but our website is the best place to start for sure.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys again for tuning into another episode here of the More Tours podcast. You can learn more about some digital marketing if you need some help with that aspect. You can learn more at clearpathchildcaremarketing.com, and we will see you guys in the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you.